Beneath the shimmering twin moons of Nevana Prime, towering spires of metal and crystal reach high into the swirling, silver-flecked clouds. Nevana's wealthiest inhabitant, Ar'kan Ravel, was no stranger to solitude. His empire stretched across the stars, a testament to his power and cunning. But for all his wealth, the one thing he valued above all else had slipped through his grasp: his beloved daughter, Lyra. Lyra had been his light, the center of his existence. Her untimely death from a rare illness left a void that no amount of riches could fill. In her memory, he had built a serene memorial garden on a moon he'd purchased specifically for her, keeping it private and inaccessible to all. Or so he thought. One night, Ar'kan decided to visit Lyra's tomb, a rare moment of sentiment for the alien who hid his sorrow behind his commanding, regal appearance. The garden lay quiet under the moonlight, but as he approached the white, glowing tomb, he noticed something that stopped him in his tracks. A young human girl lay curled on the ground, asleep, her face half hidden in the soft, moss-like flora that covered Lyra's resting place. Her clothes were tattered, her cheeks smudged with dust, yet there was a look of peace on her face as she slept by the grave. Ar'kan's first instinct was anger. How could someone have trespassed into such a sacred place? But as he moved closer, the girl stirred, blinking her eyes open slowly as she gazed up at him. She looked no older than 16, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear at the sight of the towering alien. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice a low rumble. The girl pushed herself to her feet, stumbling a little as she held her hands up. "My name's Tessa," she said, her voice shaking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I was lost." Ar'kan's sharp, alien gaze softened as he took in her appearance. Her vulnerability reminded him of Lyra when she was younger, especially in those fragile moments when she'd fallen ill. But how had this human come here? And why was she lying at his daughter's tomb, of all places? "Explain yourself, child," he said, his tone less severe. "How did you come to this place?" Tessa swallowed, hesitating. "I escaped from a slave transport," she admitted. "They took me from Earth and were selling us to whoever would pay the most. I managed to run, but then I got lost. I just wanted to rest somewhere safe, and I found this place." She glanced down at the tombstone. "I didn't know it was important." Hearing her words, Ar'kan felt a surge of anger. Not at her, but at the galaxy's cruelty. Though he was no stranger to the darker aspects of interstellar society, he loathed the slave trade. He had made countless enemies for interfering in it, but he hadn't stopped the practice entirely. "Lyra," Tessa murmured, reading the engraved name on the tombstone. She must have been someone very special. Ar'kan's eyes glistened for a fleeting moment, a crack in his otherwise impenetrable demeanor. "She was my daughter," he replied quietly. Tessa lowered her gaze, as if sensing his pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to disturb her." For a moment, there was silence. Then, in an unthinkable move for a man of his status, Ar'kan extended his hand. "Come with me. You cannot stay here." Tessa stared at him, bewildered. "Where are we going?" "To my home," he said firmly. "You are safe now." In the days that followed, Tessa found herself in the heart of Ar'kan's sprawling palace, surrounded by opulence she couldn't have imagined. Yet, her presence did something to Ar'kan, awakening emotions he had tried to bury with Lyra. She reminded him of his daughter's curiosity, her compassion, and, most of all, her longing for a friend. Tessa, too, began to feel a connection. Ar'kan was intimidating yet kind. Despite his alien appearance and sharp intellect, he treated her with a respect she hadn't known since being torn from her family on Earth. One evening, as they shared a quiet meal in one of the palace's grand halls, Ar'kan said, "Tessa, there is something you must understand. I am a man of influence, and I am not without enemies. Taking you in is dangerous for both of us." Tessa looked at him, undeterred. "You saved me. I'll take any risk if it means I'm not alone." Ar'kan's heart softened even more. Lyra had said something similar to him once, when he had warned her about her own fragility. Perhaps, he realized, the universe had brought Tessa to him as a way to heal the wound his daughter's death had left behind. But soon, the unthinkable occurred. One night, a fleet of heavily armed vessels descended upon Nevana Prime. Ar'kan's rivals had learned of the human girl he was sheltering, and they saw her as leverage to bring him to his knees. Unwilling to put Tessa at risk, Ar'kan moved quickly, shielding her in a hidden chamber beneath his palace as explosions rocked the skies above. "Stay here," he said, holding her shoulders. "No matter what happens, stay hidden." Tessa grabbed his arm, fear in her eyes. "Don't go alone," she pleaded. "Please, you don't have to protect me." Ar'kan managed a faint smile. "It is my duty, Tessa," just as it was with Lyra. With a final, lingering look, he left her hidden away and moved to confront his enemies. His power and connections gave him strength, and he used every resource at his disposal. But even the mightiest empire has limits, and his defenses began to crumble. In a desperate move, Tessa emerged from her hiding place, determined to help. She knew Ar'kan wouldn't survive this alone. She reached the central control room and managed to access the palace's defense systems, overriding them and launching a counterattack on the intruding ships. Her quick thinking turned the tide, forcing Ar'kan's enemies into a retreat. When the smoke cleared, Ar'kan returned to find her, shaken but alive. He looked at her with something more profound than gratitude. "You saved my life," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Just as I saved yours." In that moment, they understood each other. Tessa was no longer just a girl he had rescued. She was family. In Tessa, Ar'kan found not only a daughter to care for, but someone who could help him face the darkness in the galaxy with newfound hope. And from that day forward, together, they became an unstoppable force, using Ar'kan's resources to fight injustice, liberating those bound by chains across the stars. The galaxy would know their names, not as alien billionaire and human girl, but as an unlikely pair whose unbreakable bond brought light to the darkest reaches of the universe.